Hello, today I'm going to be talking about ledger lines and about how to specifically locate notes on the piano keyboard. We're going to be defining it today, the white notes of the piano. In a future video we will talk about how, in relation to those notes, we can also identify the black notes of the piano. So, the first of the two things I want to cover today is the concept of ledger lines. What we already know is that a clef defines the lines and spaces. It gives us specific note names or pitch names for the lines and spaces. If I put a treble clef here, then that tells me excuse me, that tells me that the notes are E, G, B, D, F in the line, on the lines, and in the spaces F, A, C, E. We know that from the previous video. What happens, however, if you want to go above or below those particular notes? Well, you can do so, and the concept is very simple and straightforward. It is a concept of ledger lines. What you essentially do is you just keep adding notes, and you keep adding lines and creating spaces for those notes to be in or on. So this note here is going to be a perfectly acceptable note that is resting on the top of the staff. It's essentially in the space that exists at the top of the staff. If I go on from there, I can just go on adding lines and creating spaces. And as I do so, I create notes above the staff. Because we know how the musical alphabet works, we can go and name those notes. We can say, if this on the line here, this note is the note F, then this must be the note G, this must be the note A, B, C, and so on, because we know how the musical alphabet works. We know that we go up to G and then we start over. This concept of ledger lines could be applied below the staff. If we want to go down, we would have the note here E, and we can just continue to write notes below the staff. It's not a problem. As we go down, we have the note E then, and this would be D, C, B, and A going down. Notice, because I'm going down notes, I'm going backwards down the alphabet. If I were reading it ascending, I would go A, B, C, D, E, as we would know the alphabet. We realize that going the other way, I'm simply going backwards. E, B, C, B, A. Okay? Now, having identified then ledger lines, and this can be done on the bass clef, it can be done on the tenor clef, the alto clef, whatever clef, you may have ledger lines going above or below. What you need to know is up to 3 ledger lines above and below the treble and bass clef fluently, without thinking about it. Now, you'll get to know notes above that are 4 or 5 or 6 ledger lines, especially if you play certain instruments which demand that you know those ledger lines. But for the purposes of music theory, you need to know, without thinking about it, up to 3 ledger lines above and below each of the treble and bass staff or clef. Okay, having said that, we also need to introduce, or begin to introduce, the second part of this, which is the idea of locating specific notes or specific pitches on a piano keyboard. And there are 2 concepts. We're going to look at the concept of identifying middle C and the concept of the grand staff, which is a way of representing notes on the page. The grand staff looks like this. It has a treble and a bass clef, one above the other. It then has a staff bracket or brace that occurs behind it. It looks something like this. It is very common in piano music. It is the way that we present piano music. There are other instruments that would use the grand staff this way as well. And the grand staff is simply a gathering together of a treble and bass clef, but it is unique in that in the middle of it there is a note that we refer to as middle C. This note is specifically also located in the middle of the piano keyboard. You will find the note middle C on the keyboard by locating either the lock for the piano. Often, as you look down on the keyboard from above, you'll see the lock mechanism screwed into the piano at the front of the piano. And right below that, if this were a piano where you could actually see the front of it, you would see that there would be a lock for a key, probably. That is often an indication that you're in the middle of the piano and therefore around middle C. Another indication is that the name for the piano maker will be above the middle of the piano somewhere. It's also not rocket science. Stand at the piano keyboard, look at it, estimate roughly where the middle is, and find the note C. That's probably middle C. How do you locate the note C anyway on the piano? There's more than one. Middle C is one note C. There's many other notes that we will call C on the piano. How do you locate it? You find any two black notes. Immediately to the left is the note C. The one that is immediately to the left of two black notes in the middle of the piano is middle C. You need to be able to locate that because it becomes an important reference point for us as we are writing out and understanding music theory. On the grand staff, to find that same note, if you start on the top of the, on the bottom line of the staff and you move down using ledger lines, the first ledger line is that note middle C. If you move up from the bass clef, remember you can do the same thing. You can go up above the bass clef. The first ledger line above the bass clef is the same note. Right? This is the same note. And it's called middle C. Now, as you can tell, that would mean that if I continue to go up above that note, if I write, for example, in the bass clef, I write the note D or E, I am in essence now, because this is the note middle C, and this is the note D above that, and this is the note E above that, I am in essence writing notes that could be written in the treble clef. This would be the note D in the treble clef, this would be the note E in the treble clef. Those are the same notes. I would be physically playing the same notes on the piano if I were to play those notes. One is written or represented in the bass clef, the others are represented and written in the treble clef, but they are the same notes. There's a crossover. It would equally be true that if I were to come down lower on the treble clef, I would be writing notes that could be written in the bass clef. So there is some crossover between the treble and bass clef on the grand staff. That's a concept you just need to have in mind so that you're aware of, again, specifically what notes or what pitches you are writing at any given time. Where do we find these notes on the piano? Well, I've said that you can find the note C by locating any two black notes. Immediately to the left is the note C. Once you know a note, you use the musical alphabet to locate the other white notes around it. So the note above C would be D, then E, F, G, A, and so on. Or if I were going backwards, I would go to the note B, then A, G, F, going down the piano keyboard. Those are labels for the white notes of the piano. Now, these black notes also get named, but their names are in connection with or in relationship with the white notes, and we'll get to that in a separate video. So for today, you need to understand the concept of ledger lines. You need to understand the concept that ledger lines can cross staffs, especially, or staves, especially in the treble and bass clef. And you need to understand the concept of taking notes that are written on a staff and finding them actually physically in the real world, if you will, on the piano. Finding a way to actually create and hear those specific notes. That concept of being able to write notes on the staff and then locate them and play them on the piano or any other instrument, that is essentially what music is about. Again, a means to an end, not an end in itself. Once you've got those concepts down, you think you're good with them and you understand them, we can move on to the next concept, which will be on the next video. Thank you.